Hello, welcome to my channel, Re-Vera. My name is Steve. Uh, Today I want to launch a new series. I've been planning on doing it for quite a while. Most of my last decade, my number one hobby has been kind of debating people online, the skeptic bullshit, the debate bro stuff. And I don't want to spend a bunch of time on it, but I'm going to do a little art because I've had a bunch of videos kind of percolating in my brain for quite a while. And I think I'm going to do the main videos in that series in a more edited, formal, scripted way because I want to really treat the subjects well and just once, unless there's a response video I want to respond to. But because pseudoscience, each field of it can be made extremely simple, and you can destroy it usually with a single argument. And you don't need to go back and forth destroying all their points. I've watched a lot of skeptic channels. I appreciate their content. I think they do good work. Some of them are pretend skeptic channels like Sargon of Akkad. Hello, he's not a skeptic. Some of them have a more mixed history, but they do good work in teaching people critical thinking. That's the benefit to going through all these arguments from various arenas of pseudoscience and whatnot. It's an exercise in logic and critical thinking. But it's not actually the best way to counter those narratives. The best way to counter those narratives, in my opinion, is instead of responding to all their bullshit ad nauseum, back and forth forever, destroying their whole gish gallop, you can make a single argument of your own that's simple, easy to understand, easy for a random person to verify, and that just annihilates that entire sphere of pseudoscience. Like, that's the strongest way to counter it. And I believe I can do that with a video on each. So what's bringing this up to motivating me to start doing it now is there's a large content creator who for now shall remain nameless, who has been after me for months to respond to some race realist bullshit, because he's a race realist. And I don't know why he cares so much. Saw some of my tweets. We had a Twitter argument, and ever since then, it's been, look at this video, respond to this video. So yeah, I'm gonna do that. I've been working on it. I've been putting it off because the whole subject gives me the heebie-jeebies. It's fucking gross. My grandfather fought in World War II and personally helped free the camps. He saw where this kind of ideology goes. It's fucking gross. But it deserves at least one video, so I'm going to do that. But before I launch into all these fields of pseudoscience, I wanted to do just a quick little road rant on pseudoscience in general. What is pseudoscience? And how do you recognize it? And what's the core problem with it? So, the core problem with pseudoscience is it's anti-intellectual. It's rejecting all of academic knowledge. And I think most people have no understanding of how much knowledge humanity has gained in the last 400 years since the Royal Society coined the term nullius in verba, on the word of no man. And, they built on traditions from all over. And there's, Eastern philosophy I'm not familiar with, and the Muslim world was way ahead of us in math, while the northern white people were still tribal savages, basically, etc., etc. But like, the modern period started with science becoming formalized as a method, and that's for a reason. But even more so, what most people kind of understand that, but most people have no conception of how much our knowledge has grown just in the modern period. I saw somewhere that our knowledge is tripling every 3 years, which is amazing. Something to that effect. But ever since the computer age and the information age, where people can communicate back and forth, and science is building on each other in an international way, it's amazing how much understanding there is. And to deny an entire field of science because you disagree with it, like, without being an expert in that field, is wildly anti-intellectual and kind of dumb if you think about it. And that's the core problem with all pseudoscience, all conspiracy theories, all that bullshit. And this is a foundational principle of critical thinking that isn't talked about enough. And that's that if you're not an expert, you should accept an expert consensus. That shouldn't be difficult to understand. That shouldn't be controversial. You should accept an expert consensus. Unless you're an expert yourself and you have means to challenge it. I like to use the term expert because this applies to all types of different fields, not just science or math or whatever. And also because it is general. Like, you don't necessarily need a college degree to be able to counter some stuff. But you do need to be an expert. Like, literally years of study in the field. You need to understand the current state of the field, the current knowledge, the actual peer-reviewed papers that are being published in order to have any possibility of countering a mainstream consensus. If you think an expert consensus is wrong, one of three things is true. Either one, all the experts that have spent their whole lives researching this field, that most of them very intelligent, most of them could make a lot more money doing something else, but they went into this field because they care about the truth of the matter in that field, most of them. You have to believe that all of these experts are wrong, and somehow you, with your special mutation of a truth detector brain, got the truth, even though you don't understand the whole field and the knowledge and read the papers, etc. That's obviously, based on probability, exceptionally unlikely. In fact, I've challenged hundreds of people to give me a single example of a non-expert countering an expert consensus, and I have yet to have anyone present one. So that doesn't happen. The second possibility is that they're all lying to you. The conspiracy. And of course, this is where they usually go. There's some vested interest, and they don't want to lose their grant funding, and it's like all this conspiracy nonsense. But there's two things that completely blow that narrative out of the water, and for the one is, again, probability. It would have to be a vast probability, and the bigger a conspiracy is, the lower the probability that it holds together. Like, this is ridiculous. But secondly, let's say there was a conspiracy. Like, one of the most plausible of these, in my opinion, is the anti-vaxxers, because Big Pharma does exist, and they would have an interest in suppressing stuff. And they do have a lot of influence on the FDA, etc. So, the point is, if the expert consensus was wrong and they were conspiring to hide the truth, you can't hide reality. That's the beauty of science. Like, any group of people could get together and crowdfund a proper study that can get peer-reviewed and prove whether vaccines are harmful or not. And the funny thing is, a lot of anti-vaxxers actually have done that several times, and every time the study that they all crowdfunded proved they were wrong. So, but yeah, so that's the other point, is one, it's vastly improbable, and two, even if it was true, you could counter that with actual research. But you're not going to counter it just as a lone individual, read a couple articles or watched a YouTube video, and now you think you're the frickin' expert more than people who've studied it for literal years. Not like on and off watching a video or two every couple of weeks. Like, literally their job. Like 8, 12 hours a day, their job, studying it, reading it, doing the research. Huge difference. And the third possibility is that you're the one who's wrong. Which one of these three do you think's more likely? Yeah, that's the core truth, that if you really accept and believe and internalize, inoculates you against all these stupid conspiracy theories and pseudoscience. And that's why I think it needs to be taught as a core principle of critical thinking, and I do believe that critical thinking should be taught. I just scratched my nose and he waved at me. Awkward. Anyway, what was the... Sorry, that totally distracted me. I was going to wrap up by saying there are some fields where there's genuinely not what you would call a strong consensus of experts. And this isn't to say that you get a green light to just, oh, well, there's not a consensus, so therefore I can have this opinion. No, if the experts in the field can't come to consensus on something, then you shouldn't have a strong opinion on it either. Because there's some variables you're not aware of. It's more complicated than you know. So if the experts in a field haven't come to a consensus, you shouldn't have a strong opinion on it. And there certainly shouldn't be policy based on it. A perfect example is nutrition. Nutrition is incredibly complicated. And there's a lot of parts of nutrition that there isn't a consensus on. So if you have a strong opinion that this supplement is going to cure your cancer, which none of them will, then you're probably wrong, and you certainly shouldn't say so that in public or spread that to anybody else. Now, we still have to eat, we still have to do nutrition, so the best you can do is listen to the best sources you can with the most general guidelines that we're pretty confident are true, like sugar bad and whole foods good and balanced diet good, etc. And go from there. So there's usually at least some parts of even a controversial field that are not controversial, and you need to find those pieces of bedrock and build on those, because that's all you have. To try to think that you have a strong opinion on something that's controversial among experts is absurdly arrogant. So I just wanted to get this out there before I launch into these various pseudoscience topics, because that is the ultimate defeater to all of them. And no, you can't just counter them with that, unfortunately. It doesn't work. People who believe them, they think they have justification. So if you tell somebody who believes anti-vaxxer or QAnon bullshit or race realism or young earth creationism or flat earth or any of these crazy absurd things, they're going to just think you're one of the sheeple, and you just making an argumentum ad populum that we should believe all the experts. Well, no, it's not an argumentum ad populum or based on authority, because those are fallacies. We're talking about a probabilistic expert based on a consensus of experts that study the field. The chance that they're all wrong and you're right is so absurdly improbable that it's irrational to think that. But again, that's not the best way to counter it. You have to first crack this wall of certainty with which they shield their worldview and plant doubt. And then you can come in and deliver the inoculation against further types of delusion and try to teach some critical thinking. Because once somebody understands that they were deluded and that they had a strong belief that was undeniably wrong, that plants like a ton of epistemic doubt, and people become open and they want to prevent that from happening. And that's what happened to me, at least, because I used to believe, like, my entire worldview almost was just completely wrong, and just completely wrong. I can clearly demonstrate that from basic epistemology on up. But when that wall of certainty was first breached, and I first started to doubt, it changed my life. And for years, I didn't have strong opinions about anything, because I had to go back to what is truth? How can we know truth? I had to build up my worldview from the ground up. And I think that's part of what gives me a better perspective on a lot of these subjects than some other people do, because I've actually been on both sides of it. And most people haven't actually done the philosophical work of starting at the bottom and building their way up, or even finding what the bottom is. Philosophically, what is bottom? I mean, that's a whole topic I would love to talk about. I want to do a whole stream on epistemology, because I love that. But anyway, that's the pseudoscience rant. The next actual like video essay I do will be on race realism. So, yay! And I believe what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a video first that's what you should know before you jump into a race realism debate or rebuttal to a video or anything else like that. Because there's a bunch of stuff you just got to start with. You got to like build a foundation before you can even tackle these subjects. And the very first one, just because I've used the term race realism several times, the very first one is that don't embrace their framing. It is not race realism. They're making the argument that racism is correct. They're not making an argument for race realism. They're arguing that racism is correct. And that's important to point out because you basically have two arguments with conservatives regarding race. And the first is them arguing that they aren't racist. And the second is them making the argument that racism is correct. But the thing is, once you start making the second one, you can no longer deny that you're racist. And so I just want to make that super clear, and I think it's very beneficial if everybody started doing that. Don't call it race realism, just reframe it. Okay, you want to argue that racism is correct. That's cool, we can have that conversation, but that's the argument. And if I will fucking fight on that, I will die on that hill. It is not race realism. You are arguing that racism is correct. Cool, let's have that talk. But I want that to be black and white, clear right up front. So anyway, thanks for watching, and bear with me. Thank you.